I think so. So you've all been with me all this time, and we've gotten a chance to kind of see how there's a lot more to these houses than we thought, and there's many different ways to approach them. There'll be two, like, well, even when we look at the 11th house today, if we get to it, we'll see that there are two different ways to look at things, or there's a way to look at friends, and then there's a way to look at faith and hope and doing well in life. And there's, same thing with the 9th. There's pilgrimage, there's travel, there is religion. Believe it or not, higher education is not involved. So not involved specifically. The 9th house includes all teachers and all students. So it's not like now with this modern thing where 3rd house is your kind of your grammar school thing and 9th house is your higher education. The 9th house is the house of knowledge. So let's actually start with that. Let me go ahead and find our sheet. No, there. So these are the meanings of the 9th house. Hold up a second. It signifies faith, knowledge, and religion. Now, also long journeys, right? So faith of the native is knowledge, and likewise on his pilgrimage or long journeys. Now, Layla, Fatima, and the other Layla will be here. Layla and Fatima, are you of Islamic descent? Are you a part of the Islamic faith, or were you raised Islamic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been to Mecca?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't.
Okay, so that means that Fatima, you've been on a pilgrimage. And
yes.
So this is going to kind of touch on you. I mean, one of the things about it, one of the ways in which my life has been really, really blessed is matter of fact, this whole 9th house really made a lot of sense for me or to me, because I would like to consider myself extremely spiritual. And I actually switched, I went from being kind of atheist agnostic to going New Agey, and then as a result of studying Vedic astrology, I became a Hindu. And so, as I think I told you all last week, my first trip to India was my first pilgrimage to India. It was my astrological pilgrimage when I went to the Navagraha temples. Navagraha means 9 planets. And so down in the south of India, in a place called Kumbakonam, there are 9 temples. They're all Shiva temples, so God Shiva, but they each have separate shrines to each planet. And so that was my very first, like I said, I called it my astrological pilgrimage. I've done 2 or 3 others since then. Now, the last one I did in 2015. I did another one in 2009 was my first time. 2010, I went again, and then I did a third one in 2015. So a lot of this 9th house stuff is very germane to my own experience, and especially when it comes to looking for pilgrimage, looking for religion and faith and all of it. Well, not so much looking for religion and faith, but especially looking for pilgrimage. So let's tuck in, shall we? So, as it says, natives' faith, knowledge, religion, and pilgrimage are long journeys. And I don't know about Diana or Anna Maria, or if Constanza shows up, she's probably Austrian, but some of you might be Catholic and may have gone to Rome, right? And so Rome is a pilgrimage site as well, and have visited. Oh, okay, Diana, excellent. Diana says she's pagan and has visited sacred sites in Northern Europe and was raised Southern Baptist. Okay, so that's really interesting. That's really important. And yes, Mars, she says Mars, Libra in the 9th. And believe it or not, Mars is the planet of pilgrimage in the 9th house. So it makes perfect sense. So you actually just inadvertently kind of showed us what I'm talking about. So Mars is one of the things that you look at. You know how we're into this thing now where we list all the different points. Yeah, Mars. And so it's interesting because even though Mars, when it comes to religion and faith, okay, raised in religion, but consider myself spiritual. Okay, and one has a Mars in Sagittarius. Okay, so one of the things about that I remember learning from Benjamin Dykes when he did his thing on the 9th house was he talked about how Mars represents contention and dissent. So that at some point, when it comes to religion and faith, Mars is inimical to religion and faith, because Mars is not satisfied with the answers given and wants to argue, wants to debate, wants to contend against. Hold on 1 minute. There we go. So he wants to contend against. My air conditioning went off. So you're going to hear me sneezing and wheezing and whatnot. I wouldn't say. Someone asked if she wondered if religious wars were somehow related. I wouldn't say so. What house gets war? 7. Right. So it doesn't really matter. I don't think. As a matter of fact, otherwise it would have. Bonatti would have probably said something. But 7 is the house for war, and so no, I would not think so. All right. So what does he say? He says, now this is for. Now, first of all, before we get into this idea, before we kind of tuck in, we need to kind of take into account the rise of the nuns, right? Not N-U-N, but N-O-N-E-S. And the rise of the nuns are people like Anna Maria who say, I'm not religious. I wasn't raised religious. I'm spiritual, but not religious. I have a belief, but I'm not religious, right? And so we're reading Bonatti. Bonatti was writing in 1287, 1277, 1260, right? So, and Bonatti was in an interesting position because at the time, it was against the church to study astrology. And so Bonatti found a liberal enclave in Toledo, Spain. And that was basically where, if you know anything about Toledo, Spain, that's also where quite a few Muslims were living and where quite a few Jews also lived. And there was a lot of Kabbalistic study that was happening in Toledo as well. So that was something I'd learned kind of recently about Bonatti, that I figured he was just in Italy, but actually he fled Italy and went to Spain so that he could study astrology, so that he could actually practice astrology without being burnt at the stake. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to start with was the part of spirit. Of course, everybody here has already learned how to do that. If you haven't, we know that the part of spirit by day is taking the moon to the sun, and is taking the moon to the sun. And by night, it's taking the sun to the moon and adding that distance to the ascendant. All right, so it's the opposite formula of the part of fortune. So if you all know where your part of fortune is, we talked about that incessantly, right? Because it's such a huge, major, important thing here. But the part of spirit is also, as a matter of fact, Bonatti considers the part of fortune and the part of spirit to be the preeminent. They are the preeminent parts. They reign over all of the others in a similar fashion that the sun and the moon reign over the planet. So the sun and the moon are luminaries. The other 5 are the wandering stars. And so it's really important kind of how these older astrologers really saw the sun and moon as being extremely central. And so the part of fortune is the part of the moon, and the part of spirit is the part of the sun. And so when we look at all of the things that he lists for it, they're all things that connect to the sun and the 9th house. Faith, we just talked about the 9th house and faith. Prophecy, which is ruled by the sun. Religion and the culture of God, which is ruled by the sun and the 9th house. Secrets, cogitation. Now, secrets, what happens when a planet is combusted? It's occultated, it's hidden, you don't see it. Cogitation. So now we get into this idea of where the part of spirit is an indicator for the mind. Cogitations, intentions, hidden things, so secrets and hidden things, everything which is absent, courtesy and liberality, praise and good reputation, there's the sun, heat and cold. So the very first thing that you would do is you would look at your part of spirit. And so go ahead and put your part of spirit into the chat right now, because what you're going to look at is what sign is it in, and who is the ruler of the part of spirit. So go ahead and do that. And once again, okay, we got a part of spirit coming in here. Excellent. 2 Aquarius, second house ruled by Saturn. Now, this will not be the primary significator for your religion and faith, but it will be a major indicator of it, because once again, this part is more preeminent than all of the others. So keep that in mind. So this is not necessarily connected to the 9th house, but I just wanted to bring it back up because indeed, as you can see, all of these part of spirit or part of the sun significations are about the 9th house or the sun who has his joy there. Okay? So we only got one of those, that's fine. Are there people who do not know where their part of spirit is and need to figure that out? So we can kind of come back to that at some point. But once again, if you know where your part of fortune is, then you would reverse the formula, right? So if your part of fortune is taking the sun to the moon by day and the moon to the sun by night and projecting that distance from the ascendant, then it's the opposite for part of spirit. You take the moon to the sun by day and the sun to the moon by night and project that by the part of spirit. So let's see here. Let's see. Someone said wrong formula. Oh, that was different. Oh, okay. So the 17 Pisces wasn't correct. Okay. So that's your part of fortune, more than likely, the 17 part Pisces. Ninth. Okay. Spirit in Aries, first house, Mars in the 9th. Okay. Terrible math. You all do understand. So what's interesting about this, what's been really fascinating to me about kind of coming back to Western astrology after this long hiatus, I mean, I think I stopped fully kind of immersing myself in Western astrology by 2006 or 7 and was doing nothing but Vedic. And the main thing that I notice is when I come back is how much people who are into astrology are not math oriented and how much ancient astrology is all about math. Astrology is, because think about, once again, one of the things I always say to you is Mercury is the ruler of our astrology here. And if we think about Mercury in the 13th century, Mercury was the scribe. And what percentage of the population could read and write? Very little, right? So it was only the people who could read and write and do math that were able to be astrologers. And so that's how astrology has really, really changed. Okay, yeah, I mean, a calculator works fine. Whatever, however you get it, do it. That works fine with me. No, remember they had abacus, an abacus and things of that nature way back when in order to try to do a lot of this stuff. So it was a lot more cumbersome to deal with a lot of the math related things. Okay, we've got an Aries spirit in the 2nd, which brings Mars. Now look, there is a Mars ruled spirit. So the Mars ruled spirit, who had that one? Layla Kabiri. So the Mars ruled spirit might actually have had some conflict with the religious upbringing, right? More than likely, everybody here has. 2 Aquarius used the day formula for the first time. Oh, okay, Diana. Okay, excellent. Okay, Layla, good. Yeah, so remember, once again, Mars is dissension. Mars is dissension. Not mine so much, okay. Oh, wait, oh, someone just wrote something and I closed it. Well, but my parents were brought up in Iran, okay. Shia, are they Shia Muslims? Probably Shia Muslims, religious bulls. Oh, bullshit. Oh, no, they're not, okay. Okay, so I know that, if I'm not mistaken, Iran is one of the most Shia of the countries. Oh, I get it. They're not religious. Yeah, they're not religious. I see. So you're Persian. So Layla, you're Persian. Okay. So anyway, and remember, the roots of this astrology we're looking at right now come from the same country where Layla is from. Right. The roots of all the stuff that we're looking for. Bonatti was looking at the Persian astrologers and the Arabic astrologers. And Persia, or Iran, what we call Iran now, was probably the most influential in that Middle Ages period. So we're talking between the 6th century and the 11th century, or the 12th century, okay? All right, now let's get to what's going to talk about the 9th house. So what I want you to be doing is I want you to be thinking about how you think about 1, religion, and 2, spirituality, right? They're not the same thing, right? We know that now. In the 13th century, it was considered the same thing. And so now I want you to think about that. What you tend to find is most people that are into astrology now are not Christians, are not, good old conventional Baptists or, whatever. I mean, you may have an Episcopalian, but certainly not a Catholic, right? Because it's considered blasphemy and it goes against the church. And more than usually, and definitely not a Southern Baptist or a holy roller of any kind, right? So there is this issue between Christianity and spirituality or astrology that isn't present in the Muslim world and in the Hindu world. So that's a really an important function. Like the people who are not raised Islamic or not Hindu like myself, those people, what we're finding is, I'm not conventionally, like what is it? Diana says, I'm a pagan, but I was raised Baptist. Anna Maria says, I wasn't raised with any religion and I'm spiritual, not religious. We're not going to find any Christians necessarily who are into astrology. All right, so what he basically says is, if you're looking for faith, if you're looking for the religion and faith, then you're going to look at the ascendant and the foreset nativity of the one you wish to investigate, and to see whether the Lord of the ascendant and the moon, or the stronger of them, is in the 9th or joined with its Lord, or joined with the Lord of the 9th. Now, join means what? It can be conjunction, sextile, trine, square, or opposition. Now, of course, the square and the opposition are going to create tension, right? So what I'm going to do, I think, we'll go a little bit further. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use my chart a little bit as an example, because there's quite a few of these things that are in here that are actually in my chart. And you might find it as well. So if you find that something like that is going on, first of all, does anybody have either the moon or the ruler of the ascendant in the 9th house? So that's the first thing.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Excellent. Is it moon or ruler of the ascendant?
Both. Both moon and ruler of your ascendant in the 9th.
Excellent. Oh, so fascinating. See, that's the other. See, remember, the 9th house is also the house of divination and astrology. So I would expect everybody here to have some kind of 9th house connection, right? Because we're here, Fatima as well, okay? So that's going to be the first thing. So what I'd love for you all to do now is tell me what the ruler of your 9th house is. Who is the planet that rules the 9th house?
Jupiter for me.
Jupiter for you. I mean, you can write it if you prefer, or you can just go ahead and talk it. Saturn. Okay, we've got a Jupiter. We've got a Saturn. What else we got going on? Okay, so we see here already. Now, one of the things I thought was so interesting about this was when he talked about, hey, if this is your significator for religion, it means that, and then he goes off and says it, and it's all these things that are connected to the specific significations, like wearing black vestments for Saturn's. The color black is Saturn's. Adhere to a severe religion, right? Saturn is austere and severe. Mars, okay. Oh, okay. So one of the things we're going to find is that Mars isn't in this list. Why? Because he creates dissent. And so as a result, he doesn't sit with it. Who's the one that said Mars? Layla Kabiri. And we all just talked about that. We just right. Okay, so sure enough. So if Saturn, so look at what it says, adhere to a severe religion, full of labors, that's a Saturn, especially to religions whose followers believe themselves to be better and more worthy of God than all the other religious people. One of the things that, when I think of Saturn as a religious indicator, I think of many of these ashram these cult-like ashrams in India that are super austere, that have major, major rules. Some of them you can't even talk to each other, or there's no frivolous talk of any kind. There's some that are really, really oppressive and rigid and super austere. No joy, no laughter, nothing. That's a Saturn kind of religion. Very, very austere. If Jupiter were the significator, then he's going to adhere to religion whose followers are called secular clerics. So, and look at this, and all others who are in charge of the church on account of that religion's largesse. That's a Jupiter word. And so what we see here is that Jupiter isn't really spiritual. It's about status. It's about, what did he say? People who are in charge of the church. That sounds like the Catholic Church. All of this sounds like the Catholic Church. He's going to adhere to a religion whose followers are called secular clerics, as are bishops, archbishops, and others who are in charge of the church on account of that religion's largesse. Remember also that the Catholic Church is probably the wealthiest church in the world. It's the largest landowner in the world. The Jesuits own the Bank of America. So I know we think of it as a very solar type religion, Jesus, king of, what do they call him, light of the world. We're talking traditional, right? Yes. Like you don't, oh yeah, fuck no. Yeah, no, Pluto's in the ninth, fuck that shit. I don't give a shit. Because why? Because Pluto doesn't get to rule a house, right? Pluto doesn't rule signs. Pluto doesn't rule houses in our astrology here with me. If you want to do that somewhere else, you're welcome to. But yeah, otherwise, no, fuck that shit. We're not. And I don't know if you were with me, the other Layla, because last week we talked about this. We talked about use of the outers and how I thought, the more that I do this, the less I find the outers to be of any importance. I mean, not that they're not. We did talk about that last week, right? The more I look at this, the more I work with it, the more I get into it, the more I think that outer planets are kind of like asteroids and whatnot. They're distractions from real things. They're kind of distractions from the real shit. Now, here's the thing. She says, I agree, although I have some crazy conjunctions on the 12th. And the thing is that, if you can't, I started when I got into traditional astrology really thinking that, yes, Anna Maria, wait just 1 second. Wait, so the ruler of the ninth is the significator of religion. Didn't relate much to that Saturn description. Well, first of all, where is your Saturn? What's the local determination of your Saturn, right? If the Saturn is connected to Mars, if the Saturn is combust, if the Saturn is in an opposition to Jupiter or whatever, or if there's already something in the chart that shows you're the one that said that you weren't raised with religion. Saturn is lack, right? So Saturn is the lack of things. So as well, if it's signifying religion, it might signify that you might be interested in an austere religion. But if you're not, but it could also maybe represent no religion, right? Saturn ain't got none. So that could, in my opinion, could maybe also be an aspect of how Saturn would kind of work in that respect. And we can also say that maybe you may feel too controlled or too confined, that's a Saturn word, by religion and choose not to have one. So this is kind of why I'm saying, let's be thinking about our attitude toward religion and toward spirituality, because the whole idea of religion and faith and all of these things has been expanded greatly since the 12th century, since the 13th century, right? Greatly, right? In the 13th century, there was only one true church. There was only the Roman Catholic Church in Europe, right? There wasn't an Episcopal Church. There wasn't, right? When does the Episcopal Church come? As a matter of fact, there are two schisms. The first schism in 1054, where the Eastern Church and the Western Church separate. The second major schism is when Martin Luther puts those 99 considerations on the wall, on the Wittgenstein or whatever in 1517, right? So the church had like a full 500 years where it was the only game in town until Martin Luther comes. And then in the 1530s, when Henry VIII decides that he wants to have a divorce and the Roman Catholic Church won't let him have one, He decides that he's the head of the church, and that's why to this day the Queen of England is the head of the church in England. Right? So when we think about where we were, what we're looking at, this is one of the only places so far where I'm going to say, hey, wait a minute, we've got to take into consideration how things have changed. I haven't said that in any other area, which I find really fascinating. I haven't said that in any other area. Pretty much in every other area, what's there works right now. I think in this particular area, what's here has to be adjusted somehow, but we'll see. If the sun significates it, is the significator for religion, bountiful and noble. Of course, sun has to do with nobility, namely religious people spending time between spiritual and temporal things and the like. That also sounds like the Catholic Church, right? Because of course, what was it? The Pope that said that Jesus gave Paul two swords, the spiritual and the temporal. I'm really into Roman Catholic history, so sorry, you guys. I'm also really into Hinduism and Hindu history as well. But so sorry. That's why. But when we see this, especially when we look at a lot of this stuff, we can really see. Hey there, Anne Louise. We can really see how that's going, or how that is, how it applies, rather. And Venus, now here, look at this one. I like this one a lot. Venus is the significatrix. It signifies it's going to adhere to religion in which he could be in charge of women, spending time in it, and the like. The other example of it is a person that's into, basically not really that religious, a person that is ultimately not very, hey, welcome, Annalise, good to see you. A person who's not really very religious, a person who is not, what's the word we look? Oh, sincerely religious. Kind of in a very, Natal says, you're very into the details and history of religion. What is in your ninth? Only the part of fortune, but it's in Virgo. That's perfect for a person that's interested in the history of religion. But also my Mercury, the ruler of the first, is on the ascendant. We're going to talk about some of that in a second. Okay, Mercury is a significator of the religion. He were of good condition. It signifies the native is going to adhere to religion of young men. That sounds like me. Or lettered men and the wise and the like. That sounds more like me. Because, of course, as a Hindu, what do we follow? We follow the Vedas. And there are lots of very wise, lettered, lots of people love to expound and debate on the Vedas, etc. It's similar kind of culture, a little different, but similar to the Quran culture as well. And if the moon were the significatrix of the religion, it's going to adhere to a religion of unstable men. Why unstable? Because the moon is changeable, right? The moon never is the same. Every day she changes, right? And of those quickly and easily changing from proposition to proposition, same thing, nor of those well observing their own religion. Now, Layla Akbar, you've got the moon in there. Have you experienced any of what we're talking about here?
In what sense?
How about the changing from proposition to proposition, or not observing well your religion?
Well, I do believe the ideology, but I'm not very practicing. Yeah, it's still evolving. Yeah, I'm very bad with practice. Yeah.
There we go. Nor of those well observing their own religion. Okay, so when the moon is there, it's the changeability of the moon that affects it. Now, here's the other thing. Remember, one of the things it said was, if the moon's in the ninth, the person's going to be religious. Right? So there's two things, there's two conflicting things that they're saying here. One is the moon is the co-ruler for everything, right? The moon represents our main kind of concern and interest and focus. So if the moon's in the ninth, that's where we're focused. But if the moon is there also, that means we might be so focused that we don't like actually what we're looking at, and we've decided that we're going to follow it this way. And we don't really like it that way anymore, so we decided we're going to follow it this way. And we don't like the person that's in charge of that, and we saw the hypocrisy of that person, so maybe we don't even want to be a part of that religion anymore. That's what I think is going on. It doesn't say that the person won't be true in their religion. It says they won't observe it well. So who knows? I wanted to put this part that's in the block, or in the what is it when you make it darker, the bold. If the significator of knowledge or religion the ruler of the ninth house, were joined to Jupiter or Sun from a trine or sextile aspect. Okay, so if the ruler of the ninth house is joined to Jupiter or the Sun from a trine or sextile, and with reception, we've talked about that, we know what that means, and he were any of the planets besides Mars, and he were in the first, it will judge that religion is going to come casually to the native and with him not knowing why and from something unexpected, and this will happen almost inevitably. And this leads, oh wait, no, I don't want that one. And this leads me to my chart here, because I don't have the trine or sextile, but I very much have all of the other aspects of this. Where is it?
Do all of these aspects need to be is it an or situation or is it a with situation? Like all of these need to happen or only one need to happen?
Good question. Excellent question. Excellent question. Yes. What you need. Oh, shit. Yeah. Excellent question. What we find here is that Bonatti and most of these astrologers from this time period, they start with the absolute best possible condition, right? And it's perfect that you asked that, right? So we want him joined to Jupiter or Saturn or Sun, right? Trine or sextile, right? Oh, shit. Okay. We want reception. We want any planet but Mars. We want the ruler of the ninth and the first, right? That's all of those things mean what they're saying here. Now, what happened? Why is it changing? Oh, is it up? Do you see my chart?
Yeah, it is.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, I also have Pluto in the ninth house. Okay, I also have Pluto and Uranus in the ninth house. There's my part of fortune. But as you can see, I've got Mercury within 5 degrees of the ascendant, so which puts him in the first house. He's the ruler of the ninth, and he is opposing Jupiter. So he does not trine or sextile, but he is in the first, and there is reception. Gemini to Sagittarius, right? So there's almost everything except that. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I fit that description. I basically, like I said, I was an atheist. I went atheist. I went agnostic. I went into weird, kind of weird spirituality. But what it did end up happening, and maybe this is more an example of how this particular chart is working specifically. What happened instead was that I always found myself involved with oracles of some sort, with divination. So when I dropped out of school and decided to kind of pursue myself spiritually, and that's basically what I did. I almost had a nervous breakdown, so I decided I was going to, kind of go and figure out everything. I did yoga for the first time, Tai Chi, and then started getting involved in other kind of Indian spirituality for the first time as well. But where I ended up was learning tarot and Kabbalah. Then when I left that teacher, and I mean, I never really fully left her, but when I left that area, and then I immediately gravitated towards astrology, and then I met like CF, you all know CF, so I met CF. CF introduced me to traditional astrology and to Robert Zoller and to Rob Hand, and that's where I ended up with that. I was always interested in Vedic since 1994, 93, 94. Matter of fact, a Vedic astrology conference is the only kind of conference I have ever paid to attend. And I thought I was going to become a Vedic astrologer. I was always into Vedic. Like I said, I got really, really into Vedic, and I especially got into Vedic as based on how it was connected to my own spiritual. I mean, one of the cool things about Vedic is that Vedic is all about, hey, if this is fucked up, do this. And if that's fucked up, do that. And one of the things you can do is hey, if this is fucked up, go to this temple over there and worship that deity. Or if that, or this is fucked up, go to this temple and worship that deity. Maybe those are what he's right. And in his Islamic world, what you have is something called Lal Kitab. And it's the same thing. It's the same kind of remedial measures that you would use to get yourself through the bullshit that's going on with your chart. Right. So that's how I kind of initially really got into using it. And somehow, and this is probably what's going on with having the 9th house ruler in the first, somehow it was always about going to a temple. I never was interested in feeding a black dog for K2. I was never interested in, giving money to a Brahmin for Jupiter or something like that. I was always like, take me to a fucking temple. I want to get to one of those temples and worship. And that's how this whole thing started. So before and so one of the things I remember somebody saying was, hey, you need to start worshiping Durga. I don't know how many you know Vedic, but fifth house in the Vedic chart is mantras you should be using, etc. And they said, you need to be worshiping Durga. And so I started. I was in Thailand then, so there was a Hindu temple. There was a goddess temple right in Bangkok. I started going to that temple all the time. I got really, really into South Indian temple. I got really into South Indian Hinduism. Started in Malaysia. I started going to another temple, etc. And then all of a sudden I'm Hindu. And then all of a sudden I'm going to India for the first time and going to these places. So that's why I'm kind of showing you this chart as an example of how this has worked. Even Vedically, the sun is the ruler of the 9th house. This is late enough an ascendant that the actual Vedic ascendant is 3 degrees or 2 degrees of Aries. Of Sagittarius, and it puts the sun in Sagittarius right in the first house, and the sun becomes the ruler of the 9th. And the sun represents temples in Vedic astrology. So for the longest time, I really identified with primarily with my Vedic chart. I didn't really identify that much with the Western chart. I identified with the Vedic chart. Layla, you have a question? No, I can't believe it. Okay, so I don't know. I heard you kind of clear your throat, and I was like, "Oh no, here comes one." And I love your question.
Yeah, it's in there, but I'm gonna wait a while.
So there was one. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is the part that kind of surprised me, I have to say, because I think the way that. Oh wait, remember we had that guy Chris Roberts that came in, and we were talking about. There was something that indicated his Jupiter, and he said, "Oh, so you mean the way to wealth?" It must have been when we were talking about looking at financial indicators, and his was his Jupiter. And he said, "Oh, so you mean the way to my financial well-being is through spirituality?" And we have a tendency to connect Jupiter with spirituality. I don't look at who is the representative of faith and knowledge. You must look at Mercury and see how he is disposed, because he, before all the other planets, is the Al-Mubtaz, or victor or winner, over the signification of the native's faith and the depth of his knowledge. Why? Why would that be? One of the reasons it would be is because Mercury represents the rational mind and the rational and the intellective mind, and our judgment. And so as a result, thank you. Yes, Layla, excellent. So because he represents the rational and the intellective, he decides what he believes, right? He's the decider. Who's the decider? I'm the decider. Mercury is the decider, right? Because he's the one, certainly as far as knowledge is concerned, that makes perfect sense. But when it comes to faith, I always thought Jupiter was the ruler of faith, because they even say Jupiter is the ruler of piety. So Jupiter is the obedient one who follows the law. And that's the difference between how they look at Jupiter then and how we look at Jupiter now. We give Jupiter this kind of spiritual aura, whereas he didn't really have one there. He had a virtuous aura, right? He was the virtuous one who followed the laws and as a result reaped the benefit. And so that's where Jupiter is different, the way that we look at it now versus the way it was looked at then. And that's why he's not the native's faith. They're not asking how pious is the person? How much do they adhere? Remember when they said if Jupiter is, I'm just going to go back to that for 1 second. If Jupiter were the significator of religion, it signifies he is going to adhere to a religion. That adherence is the Jupiterian. Okay, so in order to find what's going on with the person's faith and the depth of his knowledge, we wonder if he's Oriental, which means he's in a lower degree of a sign than the sun, or in a sign before the sun, free from impediments. So that means obviously no squares or oppositions to Saturn or Mars. He's not in, and namely made fortunate and strong. If he's fortunate and strong, what are the two ways? Essentially and accidentally. So if he's in Virgo and he's in the first house, that would make him fortunate and strong. He will signify the native is going to be of good faith and adhering willingly to the sciences and profound in them, and he will gladly keep company with the religious and that he will love them. Once again, there was more of a connection between religion and science back then, right? When we think about what they're calling science then, remember they were still using leeches to bleed people out, right? So that was medicine, and that was common, super common, using leeches, leeching people. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this very different, this is one of the few areas where, like I said, we can't fully just accept it, right? Even the other ones where I've said, hey, the jury's out, and the reason I brought it up is so that we can investigate and see if it matters. But it wasn't because, but I never said in any of those cases, hey, life is so different now, we don't know if it really applies. But life is different now in the religious area, or in the spiritual area, right? The fact that I even just did that, said religious, made a distinction between religious and spiritual, that's a really different thing. All right, now here's the thing. I would have thought, because since Mercury is so rational and intellective, I would have thought that Mercury would have been a little bit more inimical to faith, right? Because if you're super rational, it can be difficult to believe in something you can't see. But what we can see here is that he's combining this idea of the ninth house, and indeed they were combined, right? They were combined, this idea of religion and science. Remember, the only people that were able to read and write during the 13th century were priests and bishops and astrologers and scientists, and writers, and people who were writers. But usually they had some other kind of, a lot of those writers they either were working for the church, or they were lawyers of some kind, or they were scientists of some kind. But ultimately people who had been, and remember also, the main universities were religious. Think about Eloise and Abelard in the 12th century in Paris. Abelard was a professor at the University of Paris, and he was under some controversy because of his theology. So that's why Mercury is connected to faith in this, because ultimately education and the church were wed. Education and the church that's basically the main aegis under which you got your education, was if you decided to go into the church. And then all of a sudden you would have the ability to read and write, and then you would be able to do all these other things. So now be looking, if you can put it into chat if you want, or you can just kind of look at it for yourself. But this might be one of those things where maybe we don't really think that this works. But I don't know, because look, so take into account what it says here. But once again, also, as Layla mentioned, take into account that what they're saying is if Mercury is in the signs of Saturn, and Saturn aspects him from a trine or sextile, and Saturn were in good condition or well disposed, once again, this is the rarefied best possible situation. right? It'll signify the native is going to be religious and of good faith and very profound and distinguished in the sciences. Remember that Saturn Mercury makes extremely smart people with real skill and ability with difficult and profound subjects. Almost every engineer that I've ever met is a Mercury Saturn type. A lot of scientists, a lot of people that, a lot of historians, Mercury Saturn is extremely, extremely good for intellect. And what do Mercury and Saturn have in common? Mercury and Saturn are both rulers of the air triplicity, right? Saturn is the daytime ruler, Mercury is the nighttime ruler. So when they're together, the concept, the human, remember also the human signs are the air signs, and the human signs give intelligence. So when those two planets are together, they bring out this humane, intelligent aspect of a person. All right, so that's what they were talking about there. So what I want to do is read this one, Mercury in Sagittarius or Pisces, because of course I have that. Were to aspect him with a trine or sextile, I don't have that. And Jupiter were of good condition and well disposed. I don't necessarily have that either. And so as a result, I think it's very interesting because I actually am kind of the opposite of this. It signifies the native is going to adhere to the civil and canonical laws. I don't adhere to either. From which praises and honors and a good reputation will follow. I can't really say that I have a very good reputation. And likewise, high and famous clerical dignities. Believe me, that has never happened. And in addition, he will give plentifully of good mind and good faith, rejoicing in those things which he has, etc. Because of Mars, right, except for with Mars aspects, right? Because Mars will create dissension. So we can see here that I've got a Sagittarius Mercury. I don't have these other conditions, and so I don't fall into this category. And so for, I think it was Anne Louise, it was either Anne or Anne Louise who had Saturn ruling the 9th. Remember that the conditions have to be of a certain there have to be certain rarefied conditions for exactly what he's saying to be applicable. Same thing, Leo or the sun, if he's in Leo, the sun were well disposed. They actually said and trining or sextiling the Mercury, but the sun can't do that. It signifies the native is going to be wise, humble, and discerning. That's interesting. They said humble when the sun is usually known for arrogance and of good faith. Taurus and Libra, this is the one where it was. He will adhere to religion in which he will not persevere well, and it will hardly happen without him leaving it behind. Nor will he gladly devote himself to study, nor will he go on at length in the sciences. Even if he is of good belief, he will delight much in lively things, right? Venus likes, let's see, no, Mars and Pluto conjunction, and I see. So, you got the 9, I got it, okay. Saturn in the 8th. Oh, well, then it must have been Anna. It must have been Anna then that said she had Saturn as the ruler of the 9th. Okay, so as you can see, he's basically saying that because I thought it was an Anna. Yeah, good, thank you. So he's basically saying, this is a frivolous motherfucker if he's got Taurus or Libra, Mercury, Taurus, or Libra, he can give a shit about religion. He wants to have fun. He wants to fuck, he wants to play games, he wants to go to the theater, he wants to do everything else but get down to brass tacks and worship God and learn and study his sciences. Yes, because remember, all religions have important scriptures connected to them that one has to be able to read, do hermeneutics of. And hermeneutics are basically analysis, and do hermeneutics and exegeses. So these are all things that only good, strong Mercury is going to give you. Gemini and Virgo, obviously, that's Mercury, and Mercury himself were of good condition, which is redundant, right? Because if he's in Gemini and Virgo, then he's in good condition. Of course, he could be in bad condition, he could be retrograde, he could be in the 12th, he could be squaring Saturn. Well disposed, fortunate, and strong, and he were the sole significator. It will signify the native is going to be of good faith and religious. Everywhere blessed by the gift of knowledge, and he will understand books of the science as well. See, once again, this is all about Mercury as reader and scribe. Wondrously expounding both the divine and the others. Right? And so if he were in Cancer, it signifies the native is going to be of good condition and good faith and good belief and will strive for a good reputation, which I think is interesting, considering they just said that the moon, the changeability of the moon means the person will be not necessarily so connected to their faith. But the moon is devotional. Venus and the moon can definitely be devotional. Mercury and Taurus, and I'm very interested in nature, spirituality, green, witchcraft, herbalism. There we go. All of that stuff, nature, green, herbalism, that's the Taurus aspect of it, right? So now I think that maybe the Taurus side of it, it could be a little bit more rigorous than the Libra side, because it's an earth sign. Now, the other thing too is that I tend to meet a lot of Mercury and Taurus who are atheists. And it's because if I can't touch it, see it, smell it, if my senses cannot perceive it, it doesn't exist. So I have all the conditions of the Mercury one, fits well. Okay, excellent, Fatima, thank you very much. So that's an important thing to me, this thing that you're talking about with the Mercury and Taurus, because you're basically dealing in the things you can touch, see. You're dealing with the senses. You're working with the area of the realm of the senses in this area, and also obviously with Earth. So that's very cool. Oh, we got another person. What's that? Yes, very cool. All right, so the 9th house by quadruplicity, I thought that this would be useful as well. So if the 9th house is a common sign, the native will be unstable in faith, which I was. I had Virgo on the 9th, or religion, and to which he adheres, and the more so Mars aspect, which it doesn't. And then if it's an immovable sign, it will signify the native is not going to follow well in some faith, and that he will be changed easily from one opinion to another. That sounds like when they were saying the moon was there, and quickly so. Nor will he persevere well in any, nor will he know how to choose the better of them. And then the last in the fixed sign, well, of course, what do we expect? Constancy and firmness in the faith and religion. So I think that this is a little bit of a, shall we say, of an oversimplification, but it'd be interesting to see that. And definitely I can, because remember why they're saying what they're saying. They're basically saying it because the cardinal sign, what we call cardinal now, they call movable. Movable signs initiate change. They initiate new situations. They enter situations. There's a rush of energy that they enter. And so that's why they don't think that the movable sign can sit still and relax and just adhere to the religion. Fixed signs are fixed. They crystallize. They don't rush around or flit around. So the fixed sign is going to be constant and firm. Mutable signs are going to be now I'm on, now I'm off. Now I'm into it, now I'm not into it, right? So that's where that comes. And he said, if the Lord of the 9th were in the ascendant or in the midheaven, now mind you, think of my chart here, my 9th house ruler is in the ascendant, free from malefics, which it is. It signifies the rulership of the native over his partners, and he will be of good sense and the best morals and complete in faith, especially if Jupiter were Lord of the 9th or the Lord of the 9th were in the ascendant in the aspect of Jupiter. Now, I would definitely say now, sexually, you wouldn't say I'm of the best morals, but I'm a pretty ethical and moral person. And I would like to think that I have good sense. And I would like to think that I'm actually quite complete in my faith, especially since I what's the word is it when since I converted to Hinduism. I'm I'm a true bhakt. I am a fucking bhakt. I am all about Lord Shiva and worshiping him, and so that completeness in faith, and I have this. The Lord of the 9th is in the ascendant in the aspect of Jupiter. So that's the other reason I wanted to kind of bring my chart. And then there's this cool thing. So if you've noticed, those of you who've been with me this entire time, never has there been any mention of the head of the dragon. Actually, the only time that we mentioned the head of the dragon once was when we talked about how the head of the dragon is good with the good planets and bad with the bad planets, and the tail of the dragon is good with the bad planets and bad with the good planets. That's from Bonatti and his considerations, right? But here it says, you remember that, good. So here it says, look to the head of the dragon to see if it's in the 9th for a day chart, or the 3rd for a nocturnal chart, because then the person will be of good memory and firm in his own proposals, and he is going to observe his faith and law well. And the more so and more fervently Jupiter and the Sun and Mercury were, now we know why. Jupiter, of course, is the greater benefic. Sun is God. Mercury is faith. We're to aspect that place from the noted aspects, because then his goodness and reputation will be exalted on high and will fly through many regions and provinces. Now, why would they single out the head of the dragon for that? Why do we think that? Because it's the head of the dragon, right? It's the head. Memory, the head. Proposals, having types of proposals, the head. And also notice that it gives this kind of unusual tint to it. Because then his goodness and reputation will be exalted on high. If you are familiar at all with Vedic astrology and Rahu in Vedic astrology, you know that Rahu can give major wealth. It can give big success and then take it away. So often what you find that when people go into their Rahu period, which is 18 years, they have this 18-year period where they, all kinds of weird, unusual shit happens. And then right when it stops, all goes away. So that's something to think about. I included this because I'm like, wait a minute, since when is he talking about the head of the dragon to this extent? Because he doesn't in any other area. Okay, if the ninth were the domicile of Jupiter and the moon is in it. Is that you, Layla?
Yeah, but I'm a diurnal birth.
But you're diurnal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the signified native will be a wise astronomer and announcer of divinations and things to be. Now, here's the thing. It's a diurnal birth, right? It's a diurnal birth. Maybe that means just not to the same extent is what he's saying. Because you're obviously, you're one of the most engaged, you're super engaged in this astrological learning. You know what I'm
does
saying?
make sense. But it could be because my Mercury is also there.
So just something to think about.
Yeah.
And if you were to find the moon in the ascendant and this was another really cool one. If you were to find the moon in the ascendant were a sign having a human form. So he's talking about Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius or Virgo.
Aquarius.
It signifies that the native will have a horrible bad mind. Likewise, at the part of fortune in nativities were in the ascendant or in the angle of the earth. Now, why would the moon being there? Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with horary at all, but the moon in the first house is considered not a good thing. And I've never fully understood it. But I'm beginning to now, and I think it's because remember, the first house represents you and on some level encapsulates the question, right? It's very common that when a person asks a love question, Taurus or Libra is rising. It's very common when somebody is asking about a journey, Sagittarius rises. It's very common when people ask about, one person they asked me a horary about their money and the degree of their second house was on the ascendant. We found out after the horary chart. So we started with the horary chart, and then I went to her natal chart, and the exact degree of her ascendant was rising in the horary. The exact degree of her second house was rising in the horary. So on some level, the first house of the horary encapsulates the question. It shows you whether or not the chart is responding to your question. And so with the moon in the ascendant, the moon with its changeability and all of these different aspects that it goes through, it's in a different condition all the time. And I think that's why it signifies this horrible bad mind. It's a mind that can't control itself. It's a mind that won't be able to focus. It's a mind that one day is working well, one day is fogged by emotion. It's that kind of thing is what I think he's talking about. Let's now look at the part of faith. So we're going to look at the part of faith here because that was one of the places that we look at. So we look at the ruler of the ninth, we look at the ascendant and the moon to see if they're in the ninth. We look at the ninth house and his lord, and we look at the part of faith.
Mercury and then ascendant.
Moon to Mercury plus the ascendant. So I'll go to my chart again and then we'll we'll learn it. If you want, now you all should be able to do this on your own. I shouldn't have to kind of help you all with it any longer. So I'm going to do mine. If you need the help, obviously, please, you know what to do. Put your IMGUR link into the chat and we'll definitely look at it. So it's moon to Mercury, Mercury to moon. Moon to Mercury by day, Mercury to moon by night. Okay, so it's Mercury to moon. This is a nighttime chart, and it's 120 plus 5, right? Sagittarius to Aries is 120, 21 to 26 is 5. So that brings us to 26 Aries plus 5 is 1 degree of Taurus. So Taurus is the ruler of my part of faith, or Taurus is the sign in which my part of faith, and Venus is the ruler. Notice that they're both fixed signs, Taurus, Venus is in Aquarius, but look at how Venus is with Mars. So remember I said I was an atheist. Matter of fact, my earliest, being raised African-American, you're usually raised Christian, you're usually raised in the church, and especially, I'm 55, so especially when I was growing up, the church, the church was a major, major part of Black life. And I remember being in church as a 4-year-old or 3-year-old and thinking, get me the fuck out of here. Why am I here? I hate this. And it never changed. It never, ever, ever changed. I abhor Christianity. I have as much as I know about it, as into Catholicism as I am, as a religion, I think Christianity is pure garbage. And I always have. And I'm talking from the time I was a little fucking toddler in church to this day. And the worst thing about my life, not the worst thing about my life, but one of the interesting things about my life is that although I completely renounced Christianity, I spent 30 years of my adult life in churches singing. So I spent most of my adult life singing in churches, singing for Christian people in churches. So even now, even to this extent, we see the 9th house effect on the 1st house. That a major part of my musical career was also 9th house related. And to be honest, I really am a bhakti singer. I'm really what you would call a gospel singer. I don't sing black gospel, but I'm definitely a sacred music singer, and that's where my power is strongest. And so I didn't realize that until I was in my 40s. So that's kind of my point around this. So that's kind of how I'm looking at my own part of faith. If you've already done your part of faith, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll, or you can put your IMGUR link into the chat, and we can look at. Yeah. Oh, here it comes.
Yeah, he got for daytime. For daytime, we'll go from moon to Mercury.
Yes.
Okay, moon to Mercury, and then we'll add that into the ascendant.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So moon to Mercury.
And it's here on the sheet right here, if you can see it.
Okay. So if I'm not wrong, mine would be in Aries, 1st house.
Ah, okay. Now that makes sense, right?
If I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong. Okay, good. And so we've already been talking about you not accepting, you not being the best Muslim, not fully accepting certain tenets. 29 Capricorn.
Yeah, like I stick with the ideology, but I'm not very good with practice. Like there are certain things that I don't do, like the absolute forbidden things. I don't do that. But the things that I should do, I'm not good with those.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Now, Fatima has 29 Capricorn. Saturn is the ruler. So now, first of all, okay, be thinking about the connection to faith. Now, really, this is also called the part of religion. So be thinking about what your faith is in. Like, we put our faith, okay, Layla, we'll definitely get yours then. We tend to think, if you're unsure and you think it's in Taurus, who's the one that said that? Okay, great. Anna Maria also. Okay, it was Anna Maria that said she was unsure. Perfect. Anna Maria, I'm shocked. Okay, so Once again, be thinking about, this is something that we don't really think about now. We don't really think about faith. We don't really think about how piety and complete unswerving faith in God are not things that are important, seriously super important to our culture any longer. They were important in the 13th century. They were important in the 19th century, in the early part of the 20th century. They were things that were considered important. But it's getting hot in here. Hold on 1 second. Oh, shit. All right. So those were all things that were considered really important. Not just, yeah. They were considered really important. And so be thinking about, how much faith in God do I actually have? How important is God to me? Right? How much do I want to be in connection to God? How much do I seek the presence of God? Because that's what we're talking about, part of faith and religion, right? Because if we're talking about religion, we're talking about God. Well, they're not necessarily the same thing, as we all know, right? But really, that is what we're talking about. Where do I stand as far as God is concerned? And so now let's look at these other charts and get an idea of what's going on. Okay. All right. Okay, I don't know whose chart. Oh shit. Oh fuck. What the fuck happened? Oh shit. Okay, so I don't know whose chart that was, but we'll come back to it. Okay, Anna Louise. It's daytime and it's Mercury. It's moon to Mercury. Moon to Mercury. Back 14. Come on, really? Back 14. So back 14 is 15 degrees of Sagittarius, right? So when we say something to something, right? Moon to Mercury, 16 to 2, minus 14. That brings us to, so Sagittarius is on, so it brings us to Sagittarius, which is on the ascendant, and then this Jupiter is in Virgo. So considering that the Jupiter's in Virgo, I would say there's probably not a lot of connection to religion and faith, right? Because the ruler of it is detrimented. So, I mean, it doesn't say, there might be more interested in learning things that are spiritual, right? Or skills, or taking on skills, or even doing good works. Like, this person may not be as interested in, quote, worshiping God, because remember, Jupiter is piety and virtue. When he's in detriment, he's not going to be as pious or as virtuous. So it might not be as much about piously worshiping God as it is about learning techniques and things of the nature that give me further spiritual awareness. That's what I think probably when I think about faith and religion, with those two indicators. All right, let's look at the other one. I don't know who this is, but we'll figure it out. Let's see. Okay, so let's see, it's nighttime, or is it? No, it's daytime. It's daytime and it's moon to Mercury. Who's that? Hey, okay, Layla, thank you. Okay, moon to Mercury, 29 to 9 Capricorn. So 29 Scorpio to 9 Capricorn. Okay, so that's 30 plus 10. 35 plus 10, 15 Pisces. Another Jupiter part of faith. Yeah, I can see that. Born after sunrise. 15 Pisces. And Jupiter is? Jupiter's exalted. Interesting. So this is the opposite. Or this is, or not even just specifically the opposite, but even though she's retrograde, right? He's retrograde, but this is the opposite of what we just saw. Because this person then would have a really, really high capacity for faith, would take it very seriously. But now there are things that definitely kind of give us a little pause, though. One of them is, okay, now I'm going to get silly. I just told you fuck those outers, and now I'm going to basically bring one in. Jupiter's opposing Uranus. So this person might not really like conventional religion. She might have a really strong sense of faith, but she might not really be able to jive with with all the conventional rules and regulations around it. Is that true? That's correct, okay? All right, okay, so there we are. So once again, as I am saying with the, and actually which I didn't say earlier but meant to, is that when I started with classical astrology, I thought, fuck the outers completely. I don't want to deal with them. And then I think I had one or two charts where I didn't use them and I missed something. And so I thought, you know what? Use them as exclamation points. And if there's something really important, like if they're in a conjunction or they're in an opposition or they're on an angle or something like that, then pay attention. And so considering how close this opposition is, I decided to pay a little bit of attention. Now, the Venus might have shown us that, that she didn't like it either. Let's see. The Venus is at 27 Capricorn. Not really, right? So it really is this Jupiter. So there's, in my opinion, three things that kind of say, yes, this person has a great capacity for faith and love of God, but might not really be interested in religion. One is Jupiter is retrograde. Two, Jupiter is opposing the Uranus. And three, Jupiter is in the 6th house as Kate.
Yeah.
So that also might mean that it never actually comes up. It never actually happens. There's never an opportunity to kind of show or exhibit your faith, right? Caden houses, things don't show. Things don't necessarily show up, right? Or it could be something that it's an extremely private affair for you and you don't share it with anybody else. So that would be my take on Layla. And I think that's another one. Oh, it's 5th house. Oh, is this the whole sign chart? Oh, so y'all know that I prefer we work, and especially when we deal with parts, I really do prefer a quadrant chart. Now I don't care, I'll read whatever, but I do prefer a quadrant chart. But here we get to see that. So here's a great example of how the 5th house or the 6th house can show exactly the same thing. How the whole sign chart can be just as accurate, right? So this is one of the reasons why I say use both. Use both, because you'll find that you're going to be able to be accurate with both of them. There's a reason that things change from one to the other. It's not arbitrary. Okay, what's the next one? Oh, that's the same person. Did I miss somebody? Yeah, Anna Maria, thank you. Yours is the first one. Yours was that first one that I saw it and then something happened and it clicked to that Justin Bieber fucking thing. Okay. Oh, shit. Don't. Fuck. I'm trying to move this thing so I can get a better look. Okay, there we go. All right. It's nighttime, so it's Mercury to Moon. Really? It's back 90 degrees and forward 1. Back 90 degrees is 4 degrees Aquarius, forward 1 is 5 Aquarius. Anna Maria, really? Okay, so we've got Aquarius we've got Aquarius for the faith, and then where is Mr. Saturn? Look, he's at the end of it. So this would be something. One of the things that I've seen, which I kind of believed, but which I've seen actually work, is that Aquarius can represent fundamentalism, right? It's Saturn, who's already rigid and restrictive, and it's a fixed sign. It's Saturn's sign, and it's a fixed sign, and it's an air sign. So it's what we think, it's what we believe, it's what we expound. So what I would think could be possible, and Anna has been a client of mine as well. And one of the things about Anna is that Anna doesn't like frivolity. Anna doesn't like things that are shallow and things that are, she's not really down with things that are shallow. She's a deep thinker and deep and interested in the deep and the profound. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. It's this Aquarius, it's this Aquarius need, or it's the Saturnian Aquarian need for the profound. Now, what I would say to her is, hey, watch any kind of fundamentalism in your beliefs, right? What you tend to find is that people with strong things in Aquarius have very, very specific opinions about things. And can be, I mean, I have 2 planets in Aquarius. I have very, very specific opinions about things. I can be rigid, but I've got all this stuff in mutable signs, so I can be also extremely malleable and applicable, right? I can be more malleable and move around. You move around with things, or change my mind, or change my thinking, right? So if you don't have a lot of those other things, then okay. If you don't, and Maria says you have 0, immutable, right? So if you don't have a lot of those other things, then what we believe can become a very static thing. And it's got to be rational. It's got to, well, not necessarily rational, but it has to fit with our logic. It has to fit with our value systems. Because remember when we talked about Aquarius representing our communal values, right? Etiquette, civil society, politeness, things, because remember, Saturn is exalted in Libra. That's Emily Poston etiquette, right? That's knowing which spoon to use when, that's knowing exactly how do you do instead of, hey, how you doing, right? That's all of those things. So that's the formality of how we exist together in culture. That's Saturn and Aquarius. And so that actually might be a part of how this person sees God. They might not even see God as being this thing in the sky. They might see it as being this thing that we all do together, this thing that we all agree to, this interconnecting thing that we're all involved with. So things of that nature, so something of that nature. All right, so I think at this point now I have looked at everybody's. And it's, of course, as much as I'd love to have bigger classes, I love having the smaller class because I can do what we're doing. I can do what we're doing, which is I can kind of go into your charts and look at it. And at this point, we've been together so long that it really makes sense to do so. It really makes sense to kind of go into it this way.
We're going to pretend that did not happen.
What didn't happen? What did you see?
Your screen was on and you turned off one tab and another tab appeared.
And was it something naughty? I don't think I have any porn. I don't have any porn up,
Yes.
I don't think. Oh, it was? Oh, what was it?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Let me see what it might have been. Oh! Oh, sure enough. Okay, let me get rid of that one. Oh, I was going through boyfriend TV for a while before that. Oh, yeah, you know what? We're all human, right? Well, as I said, I don't really have very good morals. No, I'm a big...
Hey, Garth, I think I should ask that question now.
What question is that?
Yeah. We were discussing about how if the sun trines the Lord of the 9th house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I kind of have that, but I also have, you just did Layla's chart, the other Layla's chart, and she has this Uranus opposing Jupiter. I think she had that with very close aspect. And I was wondering, and you said that if it's a close aspect like that, we do consider outers. So I was wondering, what would a trine suggest?
You know what?
Like if it's an opposition.
No trines, no sextiles. Opposition, conjunction. That's it for me.
Okay,
for me.
when it comes to outers.
For me,
okay.
Nothing else.
Okay.
Opposition,
right.
Conjunction, or conjunction to an angle. That's the only time I pay attention to them.
Right. And if there is no mutual reception happening, but it's only a trine, like only one of the significations, then probably the manifestation would not be as strong, but it's going to be there. Exactly.
Okay. So just kind of think of it like, once again, which is fantastic what you're saying. Think of it like, okay, this rarefied condition that almost nobody has, right?
Yeah.
Is where he starts. And then, okay, I've got one, and let's say there are 5 conditions. Okay, I've got 4 of the 5. So then you're going to come down a peg. I've got 3 of the 5. You're going to come down 2 pegs. I've got 2 of the 5. You're going to come down 3 pegs, right? And so the signification gets you. Once again, like I said, I think I said this last week, but I have said it before. One of the things that makes me really fucking angry around astrology now, and it's not so much, I mean, I'm not angry at anybody specifically, but it makes me angry is how gullible people are in the face of astrological knowledge, in the face of astrological information. Like, people literally believe anything anybody says. And a lot of that has to do with because people don't really know how to, they don't know how to look at their chart. They don't know how to, and of course, modern astrology doesn't really help it, right? In my opinion. So they don't really know what they're looking at. They don't really know how they're doing, what to do, how they're doing. And so I just see all the time. Yes, you could. Yes. Bed pleasures. Yeah, 12,000 bed pleasures. Bed pleasures. We need those. We need those. And so my point is that it's the same with this. We don't want to take anything at this. Ain't no Bible. This is not, the Bible is not the literal word of God, and this isn't either. Right? That's my feeling. This is not the literal word of the astrological cosmos. This is, but this is close, in my opinion. This is as close as we can probably get. But what you'll notice is that Bonatti himself said, hey, so-and-so said this, so-and-so says that, so-and-so says this, so-and-so says that. But I say, and you know why? Because he was a practicing astrologer, and he was working with it. So that's how we have to be. Hey, this says that. This says that. This says that. But you know what? That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That one actually really works. That's how we need to go about it. And so, yes. So once again, so just keep in mind, once again, almost every single time he's going to give a rarefied condition that almost no one has. Yeah. When it's really, really good or really, really bad. And then we're all going to be somewhere in the middle, or somewhere near, or somewhere, every now and then.
Because it all sounds oddly specific.
It is, and it's specific for a reason, right? It's specific for a reason so that you can do the figuring out where you are. So it's as specific as that, so that you can figure out exactly where you fall. So there we are with our Mercury. And we talked about the quadruplicity of and we went to part of faith. We're almost done with the 9th house, that is. So now on to the native and his journeys. Now, this is a place to use compound on mutants. Hey, Anna Maria, have you been with us since we did the No, I don't think you have. You haven't been with us since we've done the compound on mutants, have you? I don't think you have. So I'm not going to do it here. I'm not actually going to. I'm not going to work through it. I didn't go through it, etc. Or anything. Yeah, you missed the. You missed the. It was the one before last that we did. It's the one with talking about fertility. It was talking about fertility, and that's one of the ones that I chose not to give anybody who wasn't in the group. So I'm sorry. And maybe what I might do is cut the part about that and see if I can share that with you guys. But also it's in last week's, and I'll make sure that you have last week's, Anna Maria. Oh, and by the way, Anna Maria, I got your email about it, and I never got back to you. I'm very sorry. It was about, basically you were saying, hey, some of these are on private. I decided to put the ones that are on Technique on private and only share them with the people that are in the group, during the session. Partially because when I get ready to create a for sale class, they'll be part of that class. But I'll make sure that you get other things that you haven't received yet. Okay, so these are the places we look to for journeys. The 9th domicile from the ascendant, its lord, any planet in it, Mars, the part of pilgrimage, and the Lord of domicile in which you were to find it. Now, the part of pilgrimage, this is important. And this is why, matter of fact, I think it's Layla Akbar. No, it might be Diana. Oh, but Diana's not with us now. Okay, good, never mind. Maybe it was Fatima. Anyway, whoever gave me the whole sign chart, you're gonna need to switch it to Alcabitius now. because, and like I said, whenever we're working with the parts, we need a chart. We need a chart that's quadrant, because it's from the ruler of the 9th sign to the cusp of the 9th house.
Okay, ruler of the 9th to the cusp.
Okay, and no, I'm going to go back to my chart for a second because I have this thing. Okay, Sagittarius is my ascendant. Okay, good. Thank you, Layla. All right, so Sagittarius is my ascendant, and the 9th sign is Leo. But the cusp of the 9th house is 8 degrees and 10 minutes of Virgo, the 9th degree of Virgo. That means I have to move the sun to Virgo, not Mercury, who's the ruler of Virgo, right? It says move the ruler of the 9th sign, so there we reduce whole sign, to the cusp of the 9th house. So if you have a chart, these charts are up, but I think I am.
Okay. So we're gonna need both the alphabetist and the whole sign.
Yes. Or rather, you don't need the whole sign, because think about it. If, can you see, oh, hold on a second. I'll use Layla here for a second. Okay, think about it like this. You don't need to use a whole sign chart, because if you look at your ascendant, then you know 9 signs away from Aquarius is Libra. Right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Libra isn't on the cusp of the 9th, then you have to move Venus to whatever the cusp of the 9th is. Got it?
Of course. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
In this particular case, Venus is the ruler of the 9th sign and the 9th house. So we would just move her. She's at 27 Cap, and the 9th house is 21 Aries. So that's 90 degrees minus 8 or minus 6. Okay. Yeah, 90 degrees minus 6. Venus to here, so Venus is here. That back 90 degrees, back another 6. So, oh, look at that. Back 90 degrees, back another 6 takes us into at 30 degrees, takes us to 30 degrees of Libra. Now, here's the thing. Exactly how much is it? Because every now and then you get these that it doesn't quite equal 5 degrees or it doesn't quite equal 6 degrees. This is 529 ascendant. Venus is at 27.1 and the 9th is at 21.37. Okay, so that's like, okay, that's a little bit more than 5, but it's, what would that be? That would be 5. So from 1 to 37, that's 23 or 24. So 5 minutes and 24 seconds, which still gives us 5 minutes of Scorpio. So it actually is in Scorpio. So sometimes when these, I usually round up, but sometimes when these things are really, really super close, I've got to do it that way. And sure enough, it comes out to being in Scorpio. Let's go back to some of these other ones just to see what we're looking at. Okay, Anna Maria and Anna Louise. Okay, Anna Louise or Anna Maria. Okay, so we're going from, okay, so the 9th sign is Capricorn, and it is also the 9th house. So we're taking Saturn at 29 Aquarius, another late degree to the 9th house, which is 5 degrees of Capricorn. So Saturn, oh, so we're just going back, what? Back 30 and back another 24. Or we'd go back 60, which would take us to 29, and forward 6. So let's do that. Back 60 to 4 Pisces, and forward 6 to 10 degrees of Pisces. Okay, well, that's her. Here's Anne. Or Layla, okay. I thought that was Anne Marie. Oh, maybe we did Anne Marie already. Oh, we did Anne Marie. Oh, Oh. I'm never like, oh, we don't. Oh, we just did this. This was Anna Maria. Okay, good. So then let's look at who's the next. Yeah, we did yours. Thank you. And where's Fatima? Oh, no, maybe not. Scorpio problems. Well, remember, we're talking about okay, first of all, remember, we're talking about Scorpio in the context of travel. And remember, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, and Mars is one of the planets that we use for travel. Have you done long distance travel? Yep. Okay. So it's not quite. One of the other things that I often talk about is how I thought there were more. I thought I had everybody's IMGUR. Okay. Hey Fatima, will you send me your IMGUR one more time? For some reason, I don't seem to be able to find it. And same thing for. Did we do the other Layla? Akbar will do her own. But did we do the other? Did the other Layla get hers done?
Mine?
Yeah, you've done. No, I'm talking about the other Layla Kabir. Oh, maybe.
Okay.
Is she still with us? Yeah. I just did yours. Okay, beautiful. And majored in foreign languages. A lot of majored in foreign languages. All right. 1 minute. Okay, Fatima.
Garth, can I just share my screen? I'm not sure if I calculated it correct.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. I've got to
okay.
let you.
Okay.
Enable you to be able to do so. Okay, I'm ready. You can go for it whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Garth. Photos, share. Is it visible?
Yep, there we go. All right.
Okay, part of pilgrimage.
All right, so same thing with you, right? Ninth sign is the ninth house.
Yeah,
and it looks like, except we don't have the degree of the ninth house here, but it looks like it's 8 degrees or 10 degrees.
Wait.
There we go. 6 degrees. 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Jupiter to 6 degrees. Jupiter is where? 14 Virgo.
Wait. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Stupendous. Okay, 14 to 6. So that's forward 90 minus 8. Forward 90 to which brings us to 6 Cancer minus 8 takes us to 28 Gemini.
It's in Gemini.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm calculating it wrong because I calculated in 10th house Capricorn. Can you explain that again?
Yeah. Okay, so what we're doing is, remember, you have to take the ruler of the ninth sign, which in this case is the same as the ninth house, to the ninth house. The ruler of the ninth house is Jupiter.
Jupiter, yeah.
Right? So it's 90 degrees from Virgo to Sagittarius.
Right.
Jupiter's at 14, and Jupiter has to go backwards to touch the cusp. So, so that would mean, he would have to go backwards 8 degrees to touch the cusp. So that means here from the ascendant, we'd go forward 90.
Forward 90.
You went backwards. Okay. You went backwards 90.
Yeah, I went backwards. Yeah. That's what I did.
You went backwards.
Yeah, I went backwards.
Forward 90 and then back 8, and it's at the end of Gemini.
Gemini, so that would be, so the lord of my part of pilgrimage would also be Mercury.
That's right. And wait, are you the one? Now, you were the one that had not been to Mecca, right? You're the one that Fatima had been to Mecca, but you had not been.
Yeah, I haven't been to any pilgrimage, even though I want to so bad.
Now, but you have traveled, you have done long distance travel, however.
No, I have never. I've always had trouble with long distance travel. I never had. I want to so bad, but I always had trouble there.
And that's because of him.
Who is this?
It's because of the Jupiter in Virgo retrograde in the 6th house.
Yeah.
Right? He ain't got the power to do it.
Yep.
Even though the Mercury said, Mercury is the universal ruler of travel, right?
Yeah.
So Mercury is the planet of travel, and it seems like it would make sense for it to happen. This Jupiter doesn't have the mojo to make it happen.
You
So this
a-hole.
this goes back to kind of another, not another pet peeve of mine, but a general pet peeve of mine around modern astrology, which is, I call modern astrology the art of saying yes.
Yeah.
Because even when the answer is no, right? Because they're always looking for the most positive spin on almost everything. And as a result, and it's almost always extremely shallow looking. So for instance, if you had said, oh, am I going to, why do well in my career? They'll say, oh, the sun's in the 10th, you should be famous. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I see all the time. I see that. Matter of fact, somebody just did it today. What's going on with my, will I be famous or wealthy? Oh, Jupiter's in the second. Sure. Jupiter's in the second. That indicates wealth. Jupiter was in Virgo opposing Mars. Does that sound like wealthy chart?
No, nope, not at all.
Well, no.
No.
And so that's my point, is that we need to know what's working and what isn't working.
Yeah.
So that then we can either do remedial measures or talismans or whatever it is that we need to do, and or that we decide to do in order to make things different, in order to have a different kind of experience with what's going on. So yeah, that's the reason why he's not.
Okay, it's Jupiter. I always blamed my Mars, but it's actually my Jupiter.
It's the Jupiter. It's Jupiter as ruler of the 9th. It's Jupiter as ruler of the 9th, which is long distance travel. Right. So,
yeah.
Oh, wait, there's Fatima. Perfect. Yeah. So that's why. All right. On this chart, 9th house is the 9th sign. Saturn is, where is he? There he is, 2 to 26, 2 Taurus to 26. So 2 Taurus to 2 Libra is 150 minus 6. So 4 to 150 minus 6. 150 is 17 Gemini minus 6, 11 or 12 Gemini. 12 Gemini or 11 Gemini. Now, Fatima's the one that's done the pilgrimage, isn't she? Fatima's the one that went to Mecca.
Yes.
Notice that the Mercury is exalted. Notice, even though the Mercury is combust, the Sun is in his joy in the 9th house.
9th house, yeah.
Also, what I tend to find is that what we've talked about in a relation to combustion is that, remember what I say is that the Sun burns it out and then it takes it on. Right, it burns the planet out, and then it takes on the significations of the planet as its own. It's especially strong when it's with a planet that's in its own sign, like here. So this Sun is really strongly proxying Mercury, and he's proxying Mercury in Mercury's own house and in the house of his own joy. And the Sun is God, and 9th house is God. So we got Mercury moving towards God, right? Notice that the Sun and the cusp of the 9th are exactly the same sign, exactly the same degree. The Mercury is moving towards God in this chart. But it's Mercury in Virgo, so there won't be blind faith. There won't be blind faith. Is that true, Fatima?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
There won't be blind faith, but there will be respect. There will be a respect and a need to discover the unknown, a need to nature of God. There'll be, and that will probably come later. It'll probably come a little bit later. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about that now because that's very cool. God, astrology charts are so cool. Okay, because one of the things he does is he talks about the triplicity of the domicile in which Mars is in. So that if it's in an earth sign, it's different. If it's in, so according to the place of this, look to lords of the triplicity of the domicile in which Mars is, and according to the place and disposition and condition of the one of them who is stronger, and more fortunate and better disposed you will pronounce in the period of his life attributed to that planet, his pilgrimages will be better and indeed useful and more profitable, and likewise in reverse. So we look to so for this, we now look to the triplicity rulers of Mars. Mars is in a fire sign. It is a daytime chart. Did you go to, well, you're probably under 28 now. Yes, Fatima?
Yes, 22.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So definitely this shows that the person would have done the pilgrimage in the first part of life, before 28. Although there should be another one.
I think I was maybe 14 or 15.
Okay. So first, and this part of the chart is youth. So that makes sense. The other thing is, so the three rulers of the fire triplicity are Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. You should also do some kind of pilgrimage after 28. So between 28 and 57, there should be another one, at least one more. So you had one pilgrimage of one. Now, have you also done long distance travel of other types besides pilgrimage?
Yes. So I immigrated to Canada, and so I go back and forth between Pakistan and Canada a couple of times. I've been, yeah.
Do you speak Urdu? Or?
Terribly. Terribly.
Okay. Now, how old were you when you moved to Canada?
I think I was 2.
Oh, okay, so you didn't grow up speaking much Urdu. Okay, so anyway, that's what's going on with this chart and the pilgrimages, etc. I'm once again going to pull up my chart because it's Sun to, it's Sun to this Virgo. So that's 240 minus 2. 240 is 26 Leo minus 2, or 27 Leo, which is 25 Leo. So the Sun is in the first house, which makes perfect sense. And he's also sextiling his ruler. And so I think that gives us a good idea of it. And then also the Sun is trining the 9th house. So I think that gives us an idea, this idea of pilgrimage makes a lot of sense for me. And also, like I told you, in the Vedic chart, the Sun is very much in the first house. The Mercury goes into the 12th, and it's in Sagittarius. It's just in the 10th, the first rather, and it definitely represents temples and pilgrimages. And it's also the ruler of the 9th in that chart. All right, so we're going to come back. And, oh wait, there was something that talked about, I just wanted to kind of go over this little part here. You could give a similar judgment. You'd find the moon in the 9th and the 8th. All right, but so will be not so fervently inclined to journeys or pilgrimages if the benefic were in the 9th, or join with the Lord of the 9th, or the Lord of the 9th were a benefic. Or one of the benefics were to aspect the aforesaid places, or were to aspect Mars or Sun of the Moon. It will signify his journeys to be safe and useful and beneficial, and he will return from them shortly and in good health. So if a benefic were in the 9th, which it isn't in my chart, joins the Lord of the 9th, which it is in my chart, right? Jupiter is a benefic, it's joined to the Lord of the 9th. The Lord of the 9th were a benefic, or one of the benefics were to aspect the aforesaid places. Remember, the Sun is considered a benefic unless something is conjuncting him and he's trining the 9th. Or we're at aspect Mars or the Sun or the Moon. So same thing. And also the ruler of the 9th is trining the Moon. So that's in my chart. So that's the way to be looking for these things around pilgrimage. Let's move to the 11th house for a second. We've done quite a bit with this. So,
Okay. So these 5 points they mentioned about Sun aspecting the Lord of the 9th, right? Also that.
Hold on, I'm gonna move back. Here, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, this one. Yeah. So
yeah.
So if the Sun. So the Sun, the Moon, or the Mars, if it's aspecting the Lord of the 9th, or or one of these places, are we talking about that?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's okay.
So
Wait,
that
hold
is
on.
kind of a remedy.
Kind of, but once again, if the Lord of your ninth house is in kind of a fucked up condition and there's no reception or nothing mitigating, then
Yeah.
it wouldn't necessarily be that useful.
Yeah, because my
Right?
sun trines my Jupiter. So I was thinking about that.
Yeah. So
It's very
now,
exact.
actually, hey, do me a favor and share your screen again.
Okay. Let me do that. Is it allowed? Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Here you go.
Okay. So once again, looking at Mars and the triplicity rulers for Mars.
Okay, yeah.
Same thing, it's fire, so it would be sun, and it's daytime. It would be sun, it would be Jupiter, it would be Saturn. That's when you're going at the end of your life.
What the hell? Okay, yeah.
That's when you would go, right? Because you're, how old are you now? You're 31, are you the one 31?
Sorry?
How old are you now? 23, 30?
No, I'm 29.
You're 29?
Yeah,
Okay, so it didn't happen in this first period.
yeah.
You're in this period, it ain't gonna happen here.
Oh man.
I
Okay.
would say, I mean, based on what he's saying, I mean, look at it, right?
Right.
Ain't gonna happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I would love it if I'm wrong. I mean, you got 28 years to prove me wrong.
Yeah, I kind of do, but okay, yeah. I can see that.
Okay, now
Yeah,
here,
but
Anna
it
Maria
doesn't
just said
matter
something.
because the other, yeah.
Anna
No,
Maria
I
just said
was
something. She just said that she's been lucky with long distance travel and has none of the things that but it's only one of a few. Like, it's not the main one, Anna Maria.
It's not the absolute.
I mean, this was kind of one of the later idea of things, but it's not the main. It's not the main thing that says whether or not you would.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would think as far as for you is that it's probably after 58, 57, 58 that you do it.
Okay.
I mean, it's better late than better. It happened. Remember, I didn't do my first pilgrimage until I was 44.
Whoa.
I didn't travel outside of the country until I was, 2000 was the first time I went to Canada. And then when so I was 35, 34. I was 34 when I went to Canada for the first time. And, although, wait a minute, no, that's not true. I went to Niagara Falls when I was a kid. So, but I moved to Thailand. When I moved to Thailand was the first time I had ever really left the country, left the continent. And that was at 37.
Okay.
And then my first time in India was at 44. So
Right.
it doesn't matter when, as long as it happens, baby. Right? Anna Maria, I want to look at your chart for a second and see if that comes up. And see if because she said she didn't have any of the things that we talked about, but she's been very lucky. Well, first of all, Anna Maria has the ruler of the 9th in the 10th house in its own sign. Right? So that makes it quite easy for it to happen.
I remember reading in Chris Brennan's book that if the Lord of the 9th is in the 10th house, then the native gets what are you gonna say? The native gets bounties from foreign travel.
Yeah,
or the other
and the other thing too is, remember that Anna Maria said she studied foreign languages and she actually traveled to, was it Canada? I think it was England or Canada, one of the two. But she actually traveled to study the languages as well and lived there for 6 months or a year or something like that. So you can see that as an aspect, because remember, the 9th house is knowledge, right? Also, so it was for knowledge that she did the traveling as well. And then the fact that Saturn is in his own sign, it can produce those things. Oh wait, you all can't see it, can you? Sorry. Silly me. There we go. So that's probably what all the chat's about. Hey, I don't see it. It was me that studied foreign languages. It was Layla. Oh, okay, and yes, she did move. But Anna Maria did too. That's because I remember we talked about, because Anna Maria is Brazilian, but she speaks fantastic English, and she it's either UK or Canada, one of the two. But and it's one of those two places where she learned English. Oh, you got a scholarship abroad, but not for foreign languages. Okay, got it. And it was you that. Hey, Layla Kabiri, which languages did you study? Because that's ninth house too. French, Spanish, and Persian. Woo, go girl. Now, are you Persian? Are you also Persian, Layla? All right. French, Spanish. I'm in Mexico right now, so mi español es improvado. Estoy improvando. My Spanish is improving. Okay, let's come back to the sheet. Now, we can save the 11th house for the next time. There's not, the thing is that there isn't a shitload in the 11th house and there isn't a shitload of what I was looking for. I was looking for, okay, so actually, yeah, let's just use the last 25 minutes. We'll go until about 4:30. Let's use the last 25 minutes to kind of talk about what I've been kind of trying to use the ninth house, what I've been trying to see if this theory that I have around the ninth house makes sense. So most of you know that I started this series as an extension of the astrological study that I was doing. And I think Layla Akbar is a part of that study. But so as part of the study, and one of the things that I was looking at was to see if the 11th house, because the 11th house represents hopes and wishes, and if the 11th house really did have something to do with our dreams, not the dreams that we sleep, but living the dream that we want for our life. So it's always been my dream to be a veterinarian. That's, in my opinion, 11th house. And so even though there's not a lot of context or specificity around it, remember that the 11th house is called good spirit. It was considered one of the strongest houses in the chart. It's one of the 7 good places. It's one of the 7 beneficial places in the chart. And it was considered, I remember reading somewhere where it was actually sometimes considered better than the 10th house because the motion, the celestial motion, was moving whatever was in the 11th house into the 10th, and whatever was into the 10th into the 9th. So basically, a planet into the 11th still had the peak to look forward to. And so as a result, I started thinking, well, shit, maybe this represents, our hopes and dreams, especially, when you see people that die young, or people that die senselessly, like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. What people often say is, this was a person with hopes and dreams. And I thought, wow, interesting. 11th house. Oh, this is a person cut off in his youth, didn't have a chance to realize his dreams, didn't have a chance to, act on his hope and realize his dreams. In my opinion, that's all 11th house talk. So what I was looking for in the charts of the people in the study was, to what extent does the 11th house represent their dreams, and do they get to live them? So that's what I'm still in the process of looking for. So when I got here to Bonatti today, we talked about it last week, what we were going to do. And I was really excited. I was like, oh, good. I'm looking to see what Bonatti has to say about, the 11th house and hope and, dreams and whatever, the future. And there's very little. He really focuses mostly on friendship. So the matter of friends and his good fortune and regarding his hope, and to make mention of all of these things. Whence if you did not, blah, blah, blah. So what you would be looking at is the 11th house and its Lord, the part of friends and its Lord, Venus. Now that was something different for me and new too, because we delight in our friends. We love our friends. Sometimes we love our friends more than we love any member of our family. Certainly in my case. Likewise, you will look at the planets which are in the 11th, if you have any, in the house in which the Lord of the 11th is, and the Lord of the domicile in which the Lord of the 11th is. So you're looking at the 11th, the Lord of the 11th, and the planet that rules the 11th. And the Lord of the domicile, in which the part of friends is, of course, and the Lord of domicile, in which is the planet whose domicile the part is. So you're looking at the part of friends, his Lord, and then the Lord of the part of friends. This is very different from almost anything else we've seen. Likewise, you will look at the planet whose domicile Venus herself is in. So we're looking at so in many cases, we're going more than 1 degree or 2 degrees through, right? We're going from the part itself to its ruler to the planet that rules it. And I'm not really fully sure why so much more detail here. But we'll never know. I mean, or rather, looking at it can maybe help us to know. You'll look at the luminaries and their lords. So you'll look at the luminary that's the light of the time, not both of them. If it's a daytime chart, you're going to look at the sun. If it's a nighttime chart, you're going to look at the moon. Now, guess what? Look at this. Part of friendship is moon to Mercury plus the ascendant, day or night. We just did the opposite. So, Anna Maria, Anne Louise, you should be able to do that. I should not have to do anybody else's, because we just did the opposite. If you had a night, we just did the opposite. So I shouldn't have to do anybody else's. So put yours in the chart now, in the chat now. So we'll have it for later on. I'm not going to really do anything with it, but just so you know who it is. Which, having inspected them, you will see which of the planets is the Al-Mubtaz over any of the 4 set places. He doesn't say find the Al-Mubtaz over all of them with the one, right? Although I'm sure you could do it if you wanted to. And which of them over the better condition and disposition. And of those planets, that will be kind of the significator of friends. And this is something that he does a lot, which I'm sure at this point you're probably aware of. He almost never says, use the ruler of the so-and-so. He says, look at these particular points and figure out which one is the significator for what you're looking for. And then use that. And then make your judgments based on that. And he's doing the same thing. Now, here we come to it. Because you could take from the signification of the matter of the native's friends and his good fortune, and likewise his hope. Now, this is different. These 2 lists are different. So this first list deals with friendship. This second list deals with friends, good fortune, and hope. And that's what I was looking for. So 11th and its Lord, any planet that's in the 11th, Venus, the part of friends and its Lord, then the Lord of the domicile in which Venus is, which is similar, the luminary and authority, which we talked about, which is similar, and lastly, from the Lord of the domicile in which that luminary is. That's different. That wasn't in the list. So take some time right now. This is to find the native's friends, good fortune, and likewise his hope. To write this list down. 11th and its Lord, the planet in the 11th, Venus, the part of friends and its Lord, the Lord of the domicile in which Venus, so Venus is Lord, the planet that rules the sign that Venus is in, the luminary and authority, and the planet that rules that. So those are your sections, your points or specific areas to kind of come up. And like I said, you can do it as a compound Almutin, or you can do it as just looking at each of them and finding which planet locally determined is in the best condition. Or it covers more of the points, right? If Mercury is the ruler of the 11th, if Virgo's on the 11th and Mercury is the ruler and he's in it, and Venus is in Virgo, and the part of friends is in Gemini, and the Lord of Dom, then you know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden we know that Mercury is really that significator. So it can even happen as a result of just it being in charge of all of the points we're looking for, or it has the most dignity in those points, or it has the most dignity of many, and you would decide to use that. Now, I thought this was really interesting. He talks about the three types of friendships: harmony of spirit, account or profit, and joy or sorrows that draw them together. I think that's fascinating because how many movies have we seen where there's some horrible, terrible thing that's going on, either a horror movie or even something like a fucking Jurassic Park, and a man and a woman meet and fall in love as a result of this, horrible situation that they're both in, right? It happens all the fucking time. That's number three, right? Or friends, right? Has anybody ever been in a situation where somebody saved somebody from drowning? I have a friend that did that. They saved somebody from drowning. Those people have been friends ever since. So that's kind of what that three is. The other two are obviously, they make sense. So these are basically what he says, and you might want to kind of look at it with your friends. I'm not completely convinced. A lot of my best friends, and I've had friends I've had for years and years, and they don't necessarily fall into these categories. So once again, these are up for grabs and need to be kind of cross-checked, but it's interesting. So there's a harmony of spirit if the sun and the moon have cross-changed from their places. So for instance, I'm a sun in Capricorn. If I have a friend who's moon in Capricorn, that's that love as a result of harmony of spirits, right? So the sun sign or the place in which the moon was in the nativity of the other, or something like that, right? Or here's the other thing. And the moon is in the sign and place of the sun was in the nativity of the other, or their significators or luminaries are in trine or sextile aspect. So that's that the sun and the moon in each other's charts are sextiling or trining. So my sun would be trining yours, my sun would be trining your moon, something like that. Fondness were on account of joy and sorrow. That would come up as a result of the ascendant is one and the same sign. Okay, so or the ascending sign of the nativity of one were to aspect the ascending sign of the nativity of the other from a trine or sextile, and the benefics were to aspect the sign of each nativity from a trine or sextile aspect, with the aspects of the malefics being completely removed. Okay, so that's, now maybe that the malefics wouldn't be completely removed if it were a sorrow, right? If you came together because of sorrow. Let's say, how many of us have ever been to a funeral? And matter of fact, it usually happens at every funeral. You almost always make an ally. Remember we talked about this. You almost always make an ally you didn't have before the funeral. You meet somebody that you didn't know, or maybe it was somebody you thought you hated, and or somebody that your parents talked against, and now that that parent is gone, you realize that they're actually great. That's the kind of thing that can happen. Then he said, those who are fondest on account of joy or sorrow, which we just looked at. And here's the other one, account of profit. Because remember, I'm always talking about the 11th house as friends in high places, right? These are the friends that take us to our goal, right? Because if the 11th house is our dream, is our future dream, then the 11th is the friends who take us towards them. Whereas our third house is the friends who are like family. So friendships are those in whose nativities the part of fortune is in the sign of one, in which it is in the nativity of the other, or in its triplicity, or in its trine or sextile aspect, and there will be concord between them, and they will make money from one another, one in the same matter or merchant activity, and each will be eager to make money and profit from thence. Or their friendship will come down for that reason, and delight will fall between them. So, like I said, these are all kind of whatever. Okay, maybe not. I haven't really, I do have the charts of some of my friends. If you have charts of your friends, check it with these. See if it makes any sense to you. So the first one is if they are friends that just love each other and have harmony of spirit, then it's sun and moon have cross-changed places or are in sextile with each other in each other's charts. If it's a kind of joy or sorrow, then the ascendants have connected. The signs that are ascending have connected, or they're trining or something like that. And then if it's as a result of profit, the part of fortunes are exchanging. So that's pretty much all he talks about as far as that's concerned. But what I thought was really fascinating is most of the parts of the 11th house, and what I thought I would do is just read them out to you here. Got some. Okay, Anna Maria, so great to have you back, and we'll see you next week. Okay, so I just thought I'd read off some of the names of these because on some level, in the parts, he gets more into this than he does in the other. There we go. Okay, so the first one is excellence and nobility, right? That sounds like a 10th house one. The second one is how the native or querent is loved by man, loved by people. So whether he's loved or hated. The third is a native among men, whether the person is accepted as a native among anybody anywhere in the world. The fourth is the part of felicity and profit. We're getting into the good fortune and hope part. The fifth is concupiscence and zeal or appetite for the love of secular and temporal things, right? So that's the opposite of the ninth, right? Which is all about sacred things. And interesting that it's not a fifth house one. So the word, right? The fifth house sounds like that would be temporal, enjoyable, secular, and temporal, but it's not necessarily talking about pleasure and amusements and enjoyment. It's just talking that there is a zeal for the temporal as opposed to a zeal for the spiritual or sacred. Sixth part of the 11th house is called the part of faith and hope, right? 11th house is the house of hope. However, if they're evil condition, blah, blah, blah. Seventh is the part of friends, which we've already looked at. The eighth is part of agreement of friends. The ninth is called the part of fertility and abundance of good in the home. The 10th is called the part of goodness of the soul. And let's see. The 11th is called the part of praise and gratitude. And the 12th is called the part of necessity and of the selection of things. So, as you can see, it really is pretty much talking about advancement, profit, good fortune, praise, honor, praise, which we usually think of as the 10th. But now that we see that the 11th is also. So I'm not going to go into looking for them or anything like that. But what I thought I would put these four out there for you to do that. Look for it in your own chart. So part of fortune to Jupiter by day, and Jupiter part of fortune by night for felicity and profit. Part of excellence and nobility, part of fortune to spirit, and spirit to fortune. This is the same as the part of Venus. Part of the native among men, fortune to sun, sun to fortune. And then the part of faith and hope, Saturn to Venus, or Venus to Saturn. And the night formula for that is the same for the marriage of women. So those are four parts that kind of talk about the 11th house in the context of good fortune. That is where we are. That's where I'm going to stop today. I'm happy to take any questions about anything. You can ask me about anything right now. You can ask about material we've gone over. If you want me to look at something, I'm happy to do so. But that's where I am so far. Otherwise, we're fine to kind of continue and be done. Anything? Layla?
I'm gonna let other people talk, and if they don't, then I'm gonna I hog the conversation.
Fatima and Louise, anything? You know what though? I think, Layla, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because they learn from them. They learn from your questions too. What you got to say, Fatima?
Yeah, but it feels weird to be the only one who talks. So yeah, it kind of feels like I'm just grabbing the attention. I don't like doing that, It's like taking away from somebody else. So yeah.
You're just really involved. It's okay. But I see Fatima's unmuted.
I'm very awkward like that.
I don't have any questions, but Layla, I just want to say that I do appreciate you asking questions because it brings up things that I may have not have thought about.
Thank you so much, Fatima. That's so sweet.
Yeah. The thing is, your questions are good questions. Your questions are good questions. And, I mean, there's attention seeking. There's attention seeking, and then there's what you're doing, which is you're super involved, you're super engaged, and you've got a lot of questions, and your questions are excellent, always. You never ask a stupid question. Hey, I'm Louise, you just unmuted. What you got to say?
Yeah, I just said it's definitely a learning experience that Layla, she goes through the stuff or the content that we've just been through, because sometimes it can be a bit complicated because it's a bit say it's a bit compromised. Yeah, exactly.
It's
so
dense.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's good, and I must say, it's just now after how many weeks that I just got together, that I wrap my head around that, with the part of fortune and all that comes together a bit, the different parts that you've been through. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
One of the other things that I didn't. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Annalise. One of the things that I really bugs me about how astrology is used, because people aren't really reading books and are learning it online, there isn't the sense of going back to a book and going back over what you read. And I mean, when I was right, and when I was first learning this Benatti stuff 25 years ago or 20 years ago, I had that book for years, and I read it over and over, and I underlined it, and I wrote shit in the margins, and and I went back and back to it, and I only know what I know because of that. I only know what I know because of how rigorous I was. So the first time, and especially with material this dense, this complicated, this archaic, right? This is archaic stuff. That's the language is archaic, so that's already an obstacle. So the nature of the language is already an obstacle. So even if you were inclined to, learning it on your own, which I was, it was a fucking slog. It was still a slog.
Exactly.
And I moved out of stuff, and I skipped over things to get to the things I was only interested in, and all of that other stuff. And so I completely understand. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to make sure the videos were available for people so that you could go back to it. Because one, I know I go like the wind. I know I tend to just give you so much fucking information, and that's a good thing, but it can also be overwhelming. It can also be dizzying, and so, which is, I don't want. Yeah. So being able to be like, oh yeah, I was in the session with him, and I only got like a third of what he was talking about. Then you can go back to the video and be like, oh shit, so that's what he meant when he said that. Okay, great. So that's kind of how I would look. So ultimately, be finding good resources for yourself to kind of continuously go back to is kind of how I feel.
Like I'm so glad she brought this point up, because this archaic language is the reason that I have been so reluctant to start reading Lily's Christian astrology. Like, the language barrier is always there. It's also there, like English is not my first language, so it intimidates me more. Yeah.
Exactly. That's such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah. I mean, and think about it, for whom English is the first language. But Old English isn't. Old English isn't. British English is not my first language, and Old English is not my first language. So both of those things. Now, of course, I would start as an actor, and I did Shakespeare and stuff like that. So I've got some background in it, but it's only because of that I think that I was really able to kind of, and also I've got a very
it is because of my reading that I can get some stuff, but other stuff, it just goes over my head, especially if they use words like, we're used to listening to cardinal, fixed, and muted. They use words like movable, or I think I read some other words as well. I cannot recall right now. I read it in Chris Brennan's book, and I was like, what the hell is this word? And then I had to Google, and then I'm like, okay, this is cardinal, fixed, and muted. So it's really a barrier there. Yeah,
it's hard. I'm thinking about doing another series which is just on horary. And so basically, after we finish with this one, starting one that's on horary, and going and looking at that. I'm contemplating it, because ultimately, Fatima knows it, but of course you and Annalise know that all of this stuff has been created so that I can create a class for people to pay for. And so it would be about the same thing. It would basically just be a class that later on people will pay for, but that you all would be, you all would kind of would get for free because I'm creating the materials for it at this point. And at this point also, we all have been together for a long enough time that I really want to kind of figure out a way for us to continue to be in contact with each other without necessarily you all having to pay for it. So that's because I know
I think we started this 10, 12 weeks ago, right?
It's like
In
more
February,
like 14 or 15.
I do
Yeah, it's more
remember
like 14.
it was during my exact Saturn return. I do remember that.
How interesting.
Yeah, my Saturn was exact. The transit Saturn was exact my natal Saturn the night I took the first workshop of this class. It was just us 3 people, I guess 3 to 4 people. Yes, and it was exact. Like I checked the transits. I was like, okay, and it's in the 11th house for me. So
the other thing I'm thinking about is creating like a mentorship or just creating a study, I guess like a mentorship / study group. Like I do want to be, I am professional and I do want to get paid, but at the same time, I really do, at this point, I'm really kind of feeling mother henny about you guys. It's like, I want to continue to be part of your learning experience. And so I'm still trying to figure out how that might work. How we would continue doing this. Like I said, it either will be we do horror and then electional after this, or we do a weekly study group where we just kind of get together and you all bring up issues that you want to look at and we do that. That's something I'm also thinking about. So it'll be one or the other.
Right. I think mentorship is a great idea. Because you just don't tell people, okay, this and this is in your chart. You just teach them how to look it for themselves.
Yeah, I really didn't want. Like I said, you all have been with me for so long now that I don't have that's not an issue for me. But I really didn't want this to be about reading people's charts. And to be honest, like if you follow me on Reddit or if you see me on Reddit, you know that I very rarely give people answers. I almost always tell them how to figure it out. I don't really do a lot of reading for people. I did when I first started just to kind of show what I could do and build a reputation. But now, I mean, truly. But now, I really feel more like, fuck it. I'm not gonna, you want the answer, pay me.
So there's such influx of all these posts, these very ambiguous posts about, what can you tell from my chart? Anything interesting in my chart? It's my birthday. Can you tell me what's about my solar return? And I'm like, dude, come on, please be specific. What do you want us to look at?
I mean, sometimes when they're specific, I don't even want to look at it. You know what I mean? It's because often I feel like you need to be paying somebody for that question. You need to be paying somebody for that information. You don't need to be, I mean, it's nice that you can come onto an internet site and maybe somebody will answer or not, but ultimately that's especially if it's, when will I meet my husband?
Values the market,
Bitch, fuck you, pay for that shit. Or even, and to be honest with you, even what kind of career should I do? Fuck you. You pay for that. You pay for that.
Yeah, that's vocational astrology.
They don't realize how complicated those questions are and just how many different things you need to pull out. They just,
There's too much work,
Yeah, it's work. I mean, interestingly enough, after we did the seminar on the 10th house, it wasn't a lot of work. But it wasn't a lot of work because I knew what to do. However, but I might tell them what to do, but I might not tell them how I got to it. So often what I would do instead is I say, do this job, do that job. And sometimes they'd be like, how did you come to that? And I'd be like, is that the doorbell?
There's a paywall there.
Exactly. There is indeed, honey, a fucking paywall. So
there should be. I think there should be. Yeah.
The other thing is that if the questions aren't interesting, I'm not really interested in answering them. You know, they're not, and it's also if they're not really about astrology, but just about their chart. If they're about astrology, then I'll answer. If they're just about their chart, often I don't give a fuck. Not often, almost always. I don't. I couldn't care less. Seriously, I'm just, especially now, I'm just because do you know that I'm one of the moderators of astrology readings, and that's the worst. That's the worst. All of the questions are read my chart. Read my chart.
Yeah, right. There's just so many charts there. You're right.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
so
and a lot of the posts will go unnoticed as well.
I almost never answer anything. As a matter of fact, none of the mods do. None of the mods do. None of the mods answer questions on that.
Yeah.
All of us answer questions on Ask Astrologers, but almost none of us answer questions on the one that we moderate.
I really like Ask Astrologers and Advanced Astrology for that matter, because you can actually ask questions related to astrology and not just your birth chart. And you go to astrology readings and astrology charts here and solve birth chart.
I mean, you can do it with Ask Astrology too. I just don't think it's the same people that belong to it. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I never check the moderators. Check the moderators. Yeah.
It seems like it's a different crowd of people that are at Advanced Astrology. It's not as what's the word? It's not as active. It's not as, it's got a different vibe.
Yeah.
Where it's really
Ask Astrologers is definitely more active. Yeah, it's definitely more active. Yeah.
What's really an interesting site or a subreddit is Planetary Magic, and that has all.
What site is that? I've never been there. How have I never been there? Let me check it.
That one has all the heavyweights. The heavyweights are there.
Is there any hyphen or something like that?
No, all one word. Yeah, you / Planetary Magic, all one word. That has the real astrologers. And the thing is, that's not an active site at all. That's not an active subreddit at all. But the real astrologers are there. The ones that can read
Is it a subreddit?
Yeah, it's a subreddit. Yeah,
you. Oh, I thought it's a website. Okay.
Chat.
I've never been there. How did I not know about this?
I mean, not a lot of people know about that kind of know about Planetary Magic, and so.
Okay. Is this the one with only 4,000 something members?
Maybe. Oh, are you there now?
Yeah, I'm there right now.
Yeah, probably. Hold on a second. I'll pull it up. And also, I just put it. Oh, but you've got it already. It looks like okay. Planetary Magic. Yeah, but look at how many people are online at the time. Yeah, 4,000 members, but
5 people online.
Yeah, right.
This is the one. Okay, I'm joining.
Planetary Magic 218. That's Planetary Magic 218.
Okay, just joined it.
And like I said, there's some good astrologers all over the sites, but that's where the heavyweights are. That's where the guys that really the guys are mostly men, and it's mostly men. It's mostly men. It's almost completely men on that site.
I mean, whoever can teach me more stuff, whoever can help me down the rabbit hole, I don't care who it is.
Right? Some of my best teachers have been women. Yeah, definitely. I don't care either. Whoever can teach, whoever knows what they're doing and can teach it. That's all I care about.
Whoever it is.
All right, ladies, I think we're probably done now. And so next week, what I was thinking about doing, next week should be our last one.
I think we decided 8th house for that.
8th house, life expectancy. So 8th house, death and life expectancy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I thought I'd leave that for last, also because it's a lot of work for me to kind of go through it. We may have more than one on that because there's a lot of information around that and on that. And there may be one after that. We might do the 12th house after that because we've done almost everything now.
Yeah, we have.
Right? Yeah, so we've done almost everything. So only the
can we? Is the material too much to combine them in one class? So we have to do that separately?
I think we do, because the 8th house is huge. I mean,
Okay,
the 8th house, the life expectancy thing is huge.
Yeah, it is. And also there's not much information about the 8th house and 12th house out there. Like this is something that we need to go in detail, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, once again, the 8th house is like this library that contains a bunch of other things. Contains a bunch of things that all pertain to it. And so, but a lot of what we're going to be doing won't have anything to do with the 8th house specifically, but it will be about life expectancy, etc.
Life expectancy in death. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
The 12th, I may or may not. I mean, maybe, let's just, for right now, let's say life expectancy next week, 12th house the week after. And if there isn't a lot of material in the 12th, but there's a shitload in the 8th. So what may end up happening is we may split the 8th house into 2, and then the second one do the 12th house as well.
Yeah, that would be better. That would be better. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So it'll be life expectancy part 1, and then part 2 will also include the 12th. How's that?
Part 2 plus 12. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been wonderful and fun, enjoyable as always, and I will see you all next week. Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Garth. Thank you, Garth.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Annalise.
Bye.